Okay, we're live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey as we kick off the Africa Conversation Initiative brought to you by the Africa Employee Resource Groups of the Wikimedia Foundation. I'm thrilled to be your host today, and my name is Segun Owuru. I'm part of the leads of the Africa ERG group. So the Africa Conversation Initiative is an event designed by the Africa ERG as a platform to engage in profound discussions about our cherished home continent, Africa, in relation to the Wikimedia movement. Our aim is to harness collective experiences, insights, and to foster ingenious solutions and innovations that will amplify the impact of the Wikimedia across the African continent. Through this initiative, we aspire to nurture a stronger, united Africa poised for empowerment and progress. Our Africa Conversations Initiative is not a solitary event, but rather a series that will continue to unfold as time goes on. But for this inaugural edition, our spotlight is on the theme, Africa Opportunities Through Challenges. You agree with me that it is an anonymous truth that Africa is pivotal to the growth of the movement, and this is evident in several projects that are ongoing on the continent by the foundation. Among some of these projects are like the Open the Knowledge Journalism Award, which is a project aimed at celebrating African journalists contributing to knowledge and information on the continent. We also have the Africa Growth Pilot Project, which is a project aimed at driving editor growth in Africa. We also recently did several research, the DEI Research Project, which is a research work designed to understand diversity perspective to usage of and contributions to Wikimedia in Africa, or Wikimedia projects in Africa. And lastly, I will just touch on the African Knowledge Initiative, which is a Wikimedia African Union partnership designed to generate opportunities for Wikimedia communities in Africa in order to close Africa knowledge gap. So basically, these are a few of the projects that we are doing, the movement in Africa. But I'm sure you'll be curious, what does the Africa ERG mean and what's the significance? The Africa ERG stands as one of the prominent employee resource groups at the Wikimedia Foundation. Comprising staff members of African descent and those working for the foundation within Africa, this group was conceived with the purpose of unification and empowerment. It therefore galvanized African employees within the Wikimedia Foundation, working collaboratively to invigorate the landscape of participation in the creation, consumption, and celebration of African knowledge across the entire movement. So today we are very honored to welcome a distinguished lineup of speakers, including our very own CEO, Maryana Iskander, and other esteemed voices from the movement and the foundation. So today, together, we will look at the core issues encompassed by today's theme. Just want to set the expectation, to ensure efficient time management, we regret that we won't be able to accommodate live questions during the session. Nevertheless, we highly value your input and inquiries. So as a solution, we'll provide a document link in the chat where you can readily share your questions and insights. We are eagerly looking forward to engaging with you with your valuable contributions in there. So without much ado, let's commence by inviting each of our esteemed panelists, beginning with you, Bobby, to provide your introductions and briefly share your connections to our theme, which is Africa, Opportunities and Challenges. And then you can now pass it to the next person. Over to you, Bobby.
Thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, my name is Bobby Shabangu, and I am from Johannesburg in South Africa. And I'm a Wikipedian, and that's very important to first acknowledge. And I edit on different Wikimedia projects, especially small South African language Wikipedias, including Wikidata and Wikicommons. I am the president of Wikimedia South Africa, which is currently the only chapter in the African continent. And I'm also the acting chair of the Wiki Indaba Steering Committee, which is a committee that is responsible for making sure that the Wiki Indaba conference happens annually. So this theme really resonates deeply with me as an African Wikimedian, because it emphasizes the potential that our African continent has, especially when it comes to, all of the challenges, that we have. And if as African Wikimedians, we will be coming together and working together, but not together as communities, but also working together with CLAM institutions, for an example, which are a very key component of how we execute our Wikimedia works. So it's very, very much important, because it brings those aspects, in the fore as Wikimedians. And it also highlights the fact that we don't actually need to view challenges as challenges, but we also have to look at those challenges and see what kind of opportunities we can extrapolate from those challenges. So it's very, very much important a topic for us to talk about today. Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, Bobby. Sandister, would you like to introduce yourself and also share how the topic resonates with you too?
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Segun, and thank you to the people that invited me. My name is Sandister. I am the Community Relations Specialist for Community Tech and Trust and Safety Tools team at the Wikimedia Foundation. But I am also a volunteer at Wikimedia Ghana User Group, where I've been volunteering since 2012, 2013. Now, the theme for me is optimistic. I mean, just like how Bobby put it, I feel optimistic about it because opportunities and challenges can coexist. But I think that one needs to be intentional about seeking opportunities as one works through their challenges. Africa, except for some of the outlying countries, we have been, or Africa has been, the laggard in internet adoption and internet participation for historical reasons. And that is a challenge, right? But when you come to Wikimedia, for example, Africa is here and we are trying to catch up at a very fast pace through our campaigns, the initiatives, affiliate building, regional meetups, and so on. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and lose sight of opportunities as we continue to participate and solve or deal with our challenges. And so next level things like AI, governance topics, movement governance, on wiki decision hotspots like RFCs, developer community building, heavy policy and advocacy work like freedom of panorama. A lot of times we are missing in those conversations a bit, but it's just because we are paying attention to more basic things, more pending things. But I would say that we shouldn't be distracted. If we are not intentional, we might miss these buses too. And then the vicious cycle continues. So for me, when I hear opportunities, challenges, I think both are compatible. They can be in the same sentence together. But to bridge these two, we must be intentional. While we are dealing with our challenges, let's not lose sight of the opportunities that can be found within. Back to you, Segun.
Thank you for those great insights. I really like that you touched on the way technology faces and also how to turn these challenges into opportunities. Maryana, would you like to come in quickly? Introduce yourself and also touch on the topic.
Sure, I'm very honored to be here with the other panelists who have had a chance to get to know. I am originally from the northern edge of the continent in Egypt, but today I think really reflecting on the journey that I've had living in South Africa. So also today in Johannesburg, not with Bobby, but set close by. And the CEO of the Wikimedia Foundation. So just delighted that so many of our staff are here and others. And just again, to say thank you to all of you for making the time. If I understood the title of the panel, Opportunities Through Challenges, it made me reflect on a proverb that actually does have a Wikipedia entry that necessity is the mother of invention. And when I think about that phrase, what I have certainly seen in my prior work and in living on the continent is what I would describe as like the innovative, pragmatic, forward-looking approach that I think a lot of the, not just leaders, but, citizens across the continent have to take, because that is a way of life. And so you often come up, frankly, with more innovative solutions when they're born out of necessity. And I think that there's something there that we can really reflect on when we think about the work of Wikimedia and think about knowledge equity and access to knowledge across the continent. Back to you, Segun.
Thank you, Maryana. And let's see, Tochi, please introduce yourself and you share your thoughts quickly.
Thank you, Segun. Hi, everyone. My name is Tochi. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a founding member of the Igbo Wikimedians user group, and I'm also a Wikipedian in residence at the Moleskine Foundation and Wikitongues, as well as a board member with Wiki Loves Africa. For me, the theme of today's talk, Africa Opportunities Through Challenges, actually resonates with me in a whole lot of ways. It's actually a reminder for me that Africa is a continent with great potentials and that we have a bright future, but it's also a continent that needs to work hard to overcome its challenges. And I'm actually confident that Africa will rise to the challenges and become a prosperous and peaceful continent in the years to come. Thank you, Segun.
Thank you, Tochi, for that quick introduction. And now just to go quickly to the next question, and just a preamble, Africa has come a long way, especially with our history about colonialism and how that has shaped a whole lot of issues around the economical development, infrastructure development, and even political development. And these have somehow affected the level of knowledge and knowledge equity across all our countries. So just to get a perspective, I would like to understand your perspective about what are the major challenges and barriers to knowledge equity in Africa. And maybe quickly, just a few points on how these barriers to knowledge equity could be addressed. Maybe Sandister, you can just start us off and then others can join in.
Okay, I can think about 5, but then I'll just take 2 so that others can get to also share. Yeah. I think the first thing is that when it comes to knowledge equity, we're looking at access in order to contribute and also to use. These are the areas in which sometimes equity is touched upon. And the internet access is a key barrier, I think. And a lot of knowledge lives on the internet currently. So if you are not connected, you are left out of the knowledge contribution and access as well. And then we also have general digital literacy. Sometimes people have internet, but they just do not know how to use it to access information or do not know where to go to contribute information. These are the 2 things I will just quickly bring up. But then in terms of what we can do about these situations, because my next question will be looking at technology and digital platforms being leveraged to solve some of these problems, I think I will just give the platform to others to speak so that when my question is posed, I can go deeply into that.
All right, then. And then, Bobby, your thoughts? What are the challenges that you think facing equity, knowledge equity in Africa, and how can they be addressed?
Yeah, I think I want to agree very much 100% with what Sandister has said, actually, but add on to that, I think also Sandister mentioned some very valuable points there in her opening. Africans, they are not complicated people, very, very simple people. We want to just edit Wikipedia and we want to access knowledge, and internet plays a very huge role. For us as Wikipedians, I think things like IP blocking currently is one of the major issues, really. That is a stumbling block in order to reach out to more people, to activate more Wikipedians in the African continent. And I think really in order to circumvent this or to solve this problem would be to make sure that there's no barriers in terms of IP blocking. I've seen that the Wikimedia Foundation recently has also introduced something like a registration form for people that wants to organize events. I think we can actually use that to circumvent the 6 limit IP block. And one of the things is that is a barrier. I think it's a language. We are, speaking in many languages, but the dominant ones are French and English. But I notice that more of our projects and more of our engagements is leaning towards the English, especially when we want to apply for grants, when we want to interact with the foundation. We're more leaning towards English. So I think if we are more accommodative in the French, in the Arabic, and all the other languages, that really will unlock, the opportunities for others to fully engage with all areas of funding, of support, of whatever it is that they want, especially when it comes to knowledge equity. Maybe the last one, if I can mention, maybe before we pass to the next speaker, is working with GLAM institutions. Very important to me, and something that I've seen that has been an issue. I think, it's very, very, very much important to establish the know-how of how to reach out to GLAM institutions and to partners. I understand that we are different when it comes to partnerships. For example, in South Africa, we have a lot of partners, possible partners, but in other countries, they don't have as much as we have here. So yeah, those are some of the things that I think are barriers to knowledge equity in the African continent. Thanks over to you.
Thank you, Bobby. And I really like the point that you mentioned on excessive focus on English, because each of our countries have, hundreds of languages. And I think it's important to understand not just the diversity, but also the richness of the language in Africa, and use that to be able to reach the unreached and also the minorities within our countries. Tochi, do you want to touch on that question quickly on the opportunity, on the challenges and barriers, and how to address these barriers to knowledge?
Yeah, thank you again, Segun. I actually like the fact that Bobby mentioned language barriers, because I'm a language person, and I know that language barriers is one of the issues that's prevented us from prevented Africa from the knowledge equity and all of that. Many Africans speak indigenous languages that are not widely used in formal education in the workspace. So, for example, in Nigeria alone, we speak up to 520 local languages, and it's not everyone that speaks English or speaks French, which is one of the the two of the major languages that are kind of more significant on the continent. So this issue has made it difficult for more people to access knowledge and information that is available in other languages. And to be able to solve problems like this, I believe that organizations, let's say like the Wikimedia Foundation and other open knowledge institutions can as well help in developing indigenous languages so that they can be used in formal education. One can access articles in other languages. I'm glad about what other language communities are doing in relation to making knowledge accessible to people who on a normal day can't speak English, French, or Portuguese. So that kind of situation makes it easier for people to be able to access knowledge. And another thing is also the inequality in access to education. We see that many Africans, especially those in the rural areas, do not have access to quality education. So it also limits them from their ability to acquire knowledge and skills, which can hinder their opportunities of employment or maybe being knowledgeable in different areas. So we're hopeful that the government and other institutions can also invest in education to make it much more available to people who are in inaccessible areas. I think I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tochi. I think that's a great point. The point on education, it resonates with me. I can remember when I was a teacher in one of the creeks in Rivers State in Nigeria, and understand the challenges of children across the River Niger coming to to learn and, being taught about, and the passion to learn, but the challenge of equality is also big, and even access and infrastructure and some of those other factors limit people. So thank you for that. And I will go back to Sandister now on technology, because, we understand that today, okay, before I go to Sandister, I would like to get Maryana's thoughts on that point, on the challenges, and then how these questions could be addressed. Sorry, Maryana.
No, that's okay. I want to be additive because I think that the other panelists covered all the key points, which is that we have to remember that Africa is the world's youngest continent, and how to turn what people refer to as a demographic divide into a demographic dividend, and Sandister's point about how do you turn vicious cycles into virtuous cycles. And I think we have to ask hard questions about changes within the Wikimedia movement if we want to attract young people, and think about some of the foundation's work looking at new audiences, because I think that is a key trend and a key feature for Africa that can't be ignored.
Exactly, on point. And this reminds me of the findings from our research within the foundation that young people, number one, are the future, and those are the people that will drive engagement with some of our platforms and even move the knowledge industry forward. So that's very on point. Thank you, Maryana. And like I said, Sandister, I would like to get your points, and maybe another person that want to jump on this. It's like, in what ways can technology and digital platforms be leveraged to bridge the knowledge gap in Africa and provide knowledge equity? This with the mind that, hey, the level of infrastructure of digital infrastructure, internet and all that, as it is now, and the level of reach. So how can this be used first on continent level, but also within the movement?
Thank you. So information, which eventually leads up to becoming knowledge, mainly lives online, in my opinion, these days. And so you can see that digital media is already a tool in promoting knowledge equity. After 200 years, Britannica is no longer in print. We all know why. There are newspapers and magazines that are migrating online. In 2020, when we were stuck at home, e-companies sold millions of ebooks. You can tell that internet is already in the business of just making sure that people have access to knowledge wherever it is that they are, once, of course, they are plugged in. But to maximize this reality of knowledge equity in Africa, I think we must accept that movement-wise, long-term solutions might probably lie outside our current scope of work as a movement. That's something I want to be honest to myself about. But of course, there are other things we can do in the short term as well. And it lives on our wikis and the campaigns we do around our wikis. So I'm not going to look too far when it comes to giving such examples. Now, in linking this to the barriers that we mentioned, in the long term, now I just have questions, because when I think of it and I'm like, okay, these things sound like we have to go outside our core jobs or our core work as a movement. Are we willing to do this? So I have questions which I'm just sharing for people to also think about. Now, are we going to turn into an ISP, okay, internet service provider, to deal with this internet barrier issue? Because if people are not on the internet, how are they contributing? How are they accessing information? I mean, there are companies like Google and Facebook that very early started these projects like Project Noon, Project Aquila, Free Basics. They were flying drones and balloons in the air to send internet to remote regions in Africa. Is this what we also want to venture into now, just to be sure that we remove the internet problem from there so that Africa can participate? Is it what we want to do? When it comes to general digital literacy, are we going to leverage MOOCs or MOOCs or massive open online courses to teach digital literacy? And I raise this point because as a volunteer that still recruits Wikipedians or Wikimedians, sometimes you go to events, you are going to teach people how to edit Wikipedia, right? But then you now realize that there are some people in the class that you now have to teach them how to use browsers effectively to then be able to contribute to Wikipedia, and then we can get into knowledge equity. So now our work as a movement, we are focusing on our wikis. But then when it's time to recruit Wikimedians, we realize that there's a deficit. So then Are we going to start teaching people digital literacy? Are we going to start providing digital devices for people to access information and then contribute? In terms of formats, right, and the barrier in formats, will we create more wikis or diversify the current wikis we have to be able to allow formats like audio to also take center stage? Are we willing to do all of these things? And even can we do these things to ensure that there is knowledge equity in terms of access and contribution? Research-wise, because if we're going to go into this space of leveraging tools, we need to know what we're doing. We can't fly blind. We need research. But then we also are not on that bandwagon of invasive data collection of our users and our contributors. So, of course, we have yet to be known for this. We don't do this currently. Are we willing to venture into these waters just so we can let knowledge equity happen? Now, people mentioned education and related matters like language. I know that even people who are able to contribute, people who say, me, for example, I am Akan, I speak Tree, but on any given day, I would rather read Wikipedia in English rather than read in Tree or contribute in Tree because I feel more competent in English. So then in the space of localized content, are we now going to teach people what languages, school them on how to use the internet and how to access our projects? And if we are not doing it ourselves, are we partnering with organizations to do this, or we are funding other organizations to prepare the grounds for this? So for me, if we are really going to answer this question of leveraging and doing our best with the knowledge equity and knowledge gaps, we really might find ourselves doing things other than what currently are in our annual plans, are in our bylaws, are in the books as we know ourselves to be. So that's for the long term. But in the short term, things that I think we can do, we can leverage on is our own wikis that we already have, the campaigns that we're already doing. There's so much potential and so much work left to be done. In your spare time, you can Google woman, right? And you can Google this skin condition known as eczema. The search results that you see, I mean, if you are an alien that just arrived, you would think that there are no dark-skinned people who get eczema, or there are very few dark-skinned people on this planet. And it's just because now, if I want to see maybe photos of dark-skinned women, women or dark-skinned women, I have to specify that I'm looking for dark-skinned women. But why isn't searching for just the word woman enough to be able to see women of all colors just represented in Google search results, right? So there are technical reasons why platforms like Google distributes information this way or gives these gaps in knowledge. But what we can do here as a movement is just look around. What tools do we already have? Let's say Wikimedia Commons. It's already a digital tech tool. We are leveraging on that. We have a vibrant community of moderators. Let's invest in it. Let's modernize it. Let's share it and invite Africans to participate. With all the Wikilabs campaigns that we have, I am sure Africans just being everyday people doing everyday things. We have all of that in photos and videos, but who knows is there, right? So if there are other companies who are not working on knowledge gaps, I would say, and being laissez-faire about it, I think this is a niche that we can fill. Fast forward, I mean, from being a contributor now coming to the Wikimedia Foundation and joining the Knowledge Equity Fund Committee, I just wanted to find grantees who will help make photos and videos on the internet more representative and diverse, I remember. And of course, license the content for free. But of course, you know, when it comes to these media models, people want to charge for their photographs and everything. So my search ended quickly. But I then thought, well, we can still do this for ourselves as a movement, you know, and Wikimedia, we sit in a special place in the internet. And so I feel like if we can make an impact on equity, knowledge equity here, we contribute to the general Internet of Things, the general consciousness of the internet, because we are plugged in somehow. So we don't need to look too far. We just, apart from the long-term things I mentioned, which are complicated and there are questions I have, we can just look at our platforms right now, like the Wikimedia Commons and all these other wikis. What can we do first on our own product to just make sure we are leveraging those products first and those campaigns just to foster knowledge equity and get rid of knowledge gaps?
Thank you, Sandister. Those are thought-provoking questions. And for example, I like that the fact that you touched on whether we want to, have rich media or even teach people how to use internet. These are, different things. And it stresses one of the findings that we also found in research about the attention that is being taken away by platforms that have rich media. And this is like a push and pull for our audiences, that would have come to Wikipedia or Wikimedia project, but, going for social media and some other platforms. And this is also an idea of how and best we need to think about using what we have currently to be able to draw more attention and grow knowledge equity. Anyone else want to jump on that question before we move on? Bobby, Tochi?
I just want to agree 100% with what Sandister has actually said. But I also want to acknowledge that as a movement, we don't have all the answers, and we are also learning. And in that learning space, I also want to go back to a project that I thought had very good potential, actually, Wikipedia Zero. And I see that project, we've learned, from that project, it ran for a couple of, years, I think, and we've learned some couple of things. I think it can be improved upon. And I do think that really, as a movement and as the Wikimedia Foundation, if we can return back to that project and implement it across the African continent and reach out to network providers so that they can make Wikipedia for free, I think that can be a great start, actually, to providing free internet and free knowledge and to bridging the gap. Thanks, over to you.
Thank you, Bobby. All right. Maryana, you want to add a little, or we go? Okay. So now I'll go to you, Tochi. You mentioned the issues of language and how that, reflects and impact knowledge equity. So the question will now be, how can traditional knowledge systems and indigenous knowledge be recognized, preserved, integrated into Wikimedia project? And I'm saying this on the backdrop of the wide majority of stories of history behind Africa, but also the knowledge, the language differences. So how can we use Wikimedia projects to trap, to restore, to report, and also, have a repository of our history as Africans, that others can access and learn from? Tochi.
Right, thank you. So recognizing and preserving as well as integrating traditional knowledge systems and indigenous knowledge into Wikimedia projects actually requires a lot of collaborative and respectful approaches. And then there are a few steps we can actually take to make this happen. One is engagement and collaboration, and these steps are actually based on my work I do on Wikitongues, in Wikitongues rather. There's engagement and collaboration. First of all, we need to engage directly with indigenous communities to build partnerships. And these partnerships should be based on mutual trust and respect. And then you also need to involve them in decision-making processes regarding the sharing of their knowledge. Another thing is informed consent. We need to obtain informed consent from indigenous knowledge holders before we share their content on Wikimedia platforms. And then we also need to respect their rights to ownership and control of whatever knowledge they have. And we also need to be aware of cultural sensitivity. We need to understand that cultural context and nuances of the knowledge being shared. And then we also need to ensure that the representation is accurate and it respects the cultural significance of the information. Another thing is oral traditions. We should acknowledge and adapt to the oral nature of many indigenous knowledge systems. We should work with communities to find the appropriate ways to document and share oral traditions while maintaining their authenticity. And also we have to be collaborative in the content creation. We need to encourage these indigenous communities to contribute their own knowledge to Wikimedia projects. We need to involve them in maybe creating articles, adding references to already existing articles, sharing traditional stories, practices, and beliefs. And then one very important thing is as we are doing all of this, we need to remember their local languages. We need to be able to share this knowledge in their local languages of the indigenous communities, so that we can preserve the authenticity of the information, and also to ensure the accessibility of those who understand the language. We need to also do a lot of capacity building. We need to provide training and support to them. We need to do a lot of licensing and attribution. I think in choosing open licenses, especially, let's say for commons, we need to choose licenses that align with their indigenous values and permissions, and also to provide clear attribution to the knowledge holders and communities. So one thing, I think one example I have of this is Australian universities. They're actually very good at this. I was trying to search for some schools to run some programs, and then I realized that at the end of their websites, they always try to give, to acknowledge or attribute the owners of the land in which their universities are being built. So this kind of situation can help in preserving all of our indigenous knowledges in the Wikimedia platforms. And then we also need to remember that each indigenous community has its own protocols and preferences. Cultures differ. So from, let's say from country A to country B, from state A to state B, we have different cultures. So we need to remember that they have their own protocols and references. So it's essential to tailor the approach to their own specific needs, and not just to whatever we feel like. So these are the different ways I feel that we can help in preserving and recognizing and also integrating traditional knowledge systems into Wikimedia projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Tochi. Those are like, PhD thesis in each of those points. One point I want to draw, and really interested in this. I remember when I was researching about this. I'm a person of story of history, and I've been wondering if there's ways or structured ways where Wikimedia or Wikipedia can help, store or, write the stories that either are long forgotten. For example, I came across this project by Google where they were helping the Timbuktu community in Mali to rewrite or document the manuscript, the old manuscript there. And I'm thinking, do you think Wikipedia or Wikimedia can do this? Because there are so many stories. For example, the ones that we listen to our grandmothers and the moonlight in those days, some of them are not online. Some of them we can access. And it will be so glad to see Wikipedia, or generally all the project, to be where people can go to read about these histories, these stories, these African stories. I was in a museum in Europe recently, and it struck me that our stories are even more told in some of this museum, better and stored there than we even have in Africa. But even in online, it will be interesting to be able to find a ways. Are there things like that? Maybe another person could touch that. Tochi, yes, briefly.
Okay, so I'm aware of a couple of projects by different Wikimedia communities, although I'm not so sure of the ones done in Africa, but I know that the communities from India, Indonesia, they are doing a lot with Wikisource and preserving all of these manuscripts. And I think in Nigeria here, we have the oral histories documentation as well. And I think we can explore Wikisource in documenting, let's say, our manuscripts or histories that are probably going extinct that no one has access to anymore, or maybe things that we might not be able to access in the next 30 years or 20 years. So Wikisource is one of the best ways we can do this. I've seen it happen, and I'm hoping that we can follow in these steps. Yeah. We can actually see what other communities are doing. And I think I attended one of the, Wiki Histories conference that Wikimedians in Australia organized. And I see how they are working collaboratively with their museums, their GLAM institutions, to be able to document the histories of the Aboriginal people. And this is actually also like, these are things happening in the community actually. And these are also footsteps we can follow as Africans and as Africans in the Wikimedia communities to be able to document our own histories and oral stories or things there. But then one challenge we have is when we do all of these with all these other projects, when it comes to citing them on the English Wikipedia or maybe, for example, the English Wikipedia, I don't think that as of now, the English Wikipedia is open yet to oral history citations. So I'm hopeful that subsequently this will improve, because for us here, referencing is kind of a problem and a challenge for us. And we have a lot of our stories being told orally than in written format. So I'm hopeful that someday we'll be able to.
Thank you very much. Maryana, are there thoughts around strategy on this? Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to connect a few points that all three of the other panelists have made. I feel like, Sandister, you started with some quite provocative questions, like what is our role in the system? Like, what is the thing that we need to take on and tackle? And I think probably one of the most overused words in most organizations is partnerships. Like, everybody throws it around, like we must form partnerships. But if we think hard about what are we good at and what are other people good at, and how do we find the right people to be good at things we probably will never be good at, and how to form those kinds of relationships authentically, right? And so when I hear Tochi, when I hear you talk about how do we reach communities, who else has credibility? Who else already has authenticity in those spaces that we can build and leverage? Because I think that, like, how you approach how to build genuinely two-way partnerships that are real, that there's real benefit for both partners and shared goals, is the only way to tackle such big questions that I don't think, all the money in the world is going to help us solve some of these things on our own. And I do think that the question, like partnerships, it's not a team at the foundation. It's a much more fundamental concept of what institutions on the ground already have credibility that can allow us to bring, again, our work and our assets in a way that can be received and that can be understood. And when I think about some of the work, even with the second round of grantees in the Knowledge Equity Fund, in some cases, like in Indonesia, it's finding other organizations that already have credibility in some of these spaces and finding ways. And I think that is it's a piece and a strategy and a topic that I think applies to the African context in a big way, and something that I think we should definitely spend more time reflecting on.
Thank you, Maryana. Yeah, just to save some time, I think we also want to move ahead. I really like to dissect that point on traditional knowledge system, and also the point on partnerships, but we'd like to move ahead. So the next point is on gender. We understand in Africa that yes, the gender disparities is a thing, from education to access to knowledge to economic opportunities for even women particularly, it's an issue. So, and even on the topic of knowledge. And so this question is about what strategies can we implement to address gender disparities in access to and dissemination of free knowledge across the Wikimedia project. And maybe I will this time start with Bobby, and then maybe someone else like Tochi, you could jump in here.
Yeah, thanks, Segun, for that question. I think this is a historical question, really. The gender question is really historic, and it's also cultural as well. And it then boils down or goes down to the internet. What we see, what is happening on the internet, is what we see physically in our world where we live in. So for us as a movement, really, I think we really need to be to do projects that I don't know, forget the word. Yeah, but to be more focused on targeting just women, to be more focused on reaching out to institutions and to be targeted specifically when we are planning that, okay, this is what we want to do to increase the number of the women editors on Wikipedia. So we need to have a targeted approach, and we need to be very much I forget the word that I want to use here, but yeah, we need to be just targeted.
Okay.
We should not. We should be intentional. That's the word. I don't know why English is running away. I was reading a lot today, but I wanted to use the word intentional. Yes, we really need to be intentional, like literally intentional, and to be more targeted when we're doing these kinds of projects. I think that way, that will be the start for us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bobby. And Tochi, do you want to touch on that too?
Yes. So there are different strategies actually we can implement to address the gender disparities in the access to and dissemination of free knowledge. So one I like so much is the mentorship programs and support networks. So we can establish online communities, because I know that we are dispersed, we are in different places, or forums where women editors can share and connect and also share experiences and also support each other. And we can also do these mentorships by pairing female editors with more experienced editors who can provide guidance and support to others. So this can help them to learn and also feel the ropes and feel more confident in their own contributions. So I'm a member of the WikiLoves Women Focus Group, and I know how much we women there act as a support group to each other. We are women from different African countries, and I know how much we get to support each other in our programs, in trying to get more people on board, in trying to share free knowledge and also be able to learn different things. So this WikiLoves Women Focus Group is actually like a very good example for me. And this is also one of the things, the proposals I submitted to the Wiki Women Camp. I'm hoping it gets accepted, but mentorship is one of the ways we can do that. Another thing is we also need to develop user-friendly editing tools. So there are sometimes that women might want to contribute or access knowledge, and then they get to realize that it's so technical for them, and they just decide to, like, I don't want a problem, like I don't want wahala, and then they just leave it and go. Another thing is for women in the community who are sharing knowledge of contributors, we can create more visibility of the women contributors, and by this I mean we can highlight the contributions of women editors through features, interviews, recognitions on the wiki platforms. Maybe we can have something like Wikimedia, should I say Woman Wikimedian of the Year, if there's anything like that, but I'm just saying. So these are the different ways. And then we can also partner with women organizations. We need capacity building. So partnership is actually very important in all of whatever it is that we're doing to promote the diversity and also encourage more women. Thank you.
Thank you, Tochi. I like the idea of the Woman Wikimedia of the Year. Yeah, women love recognition, and I think that is a good motivation. And also the fact that, to create user-friendly editing. Truly, I understand when things can be complex, it's hard to unravel, and that's a dissatisfaction or this motivation for them to be involved. So thank you for that. For time, I want to move on to the next question, and this is to Bobby. And this is on the fact of marginalized communities. We know that there are, like we mentioned, there are a lot of languages in Africa, and this also pops up the question of marginalized communities. So how can we empower marginalized communities, such as rural populations, to enhance access and benefit from knowledge resources and educational opportunities in Africa? Bobby?
Sure, thank you so much. So, I'm coming from a rural area myself in Mpumalanga province, part of a, very rural area in my province. And I remember the library played a very, very important role. Every young person would go to that library and find any type of resource that they are looking for. Unfortunately, libraries in the rural areas lack resources. We just survive by with what is there. So I believe that if we can work with the librarians that are here in the Wikimedia movement, start supporting them, start seeking, and looking at what is it that we can do, in order to support them, to work with them, to support the libraries that they are working in. That will be the first start. Currently, I see that even government has implemented a program where they have put laptops and internet in South African libraries. I don't know, across the African continent, but I think that has also upped the ante, actually, has increased even the interest for rural, especially people and young people to go and access knowledge in the libraries there. So I believe that, as I said earlier on, Africans are not complicated people. They're just simple. They want you to just put that resource in there, and then they'll start using it. So I believe the first start really will be that to work with the librarians that are here in the movement. And before we even go to the libraries themselves, I believe that the librarians that are here, in the Wikimedia movement, they know better of what needs to be done in order for us to, upskill and uplift communities out there in rural areas. Over to you. I think you're muted, Segun.
Thank you, Bobby. Sorry, that's the popular language, you're muted. I was saying I wanted to flip the question back to you. When you think about Wikipedia, Wikimedia project, it's a question of not just content availability, but also usage and access. So now, if we work and provide resources to ensure available content, how do you still do this and try to make sure that people use them and have access? I know you mentioned library. So, but also, do you think there's something else we need to do to drive usage even more while still trying to build content through the movement, especially for marginalized communities there?
Yeah, I do think that it begins with working with the librarians that are here as part of our community, and then reaching out to the libraries. And then from there, we can then begin to run projects, edit workshops where we are trying to, edit content and other projects, like the one lib, one ref. But basically, I think really the start would be, to simply just run edit workshops, but that can be done through the libraries themselves. But the engagement or the channel with which we can actually access those libraries and know how we can support them would be through the partnerships. I don't want to use that word, but I'm forced to use it because we've said it a lot in this meeting.
Yeah,
yeah, with the libraries, and especially communicating with the Wikipedians who are already librarians here, and then they can tell us, give us the whole host of list of which organizations that we can partner with in order to support them, because that's where real communities are. As Wikipedians, we don't have, community. I'm just Wikipedian from Johannesburg, but in order to reach out to people, I need to go to an institution to talk to the head, so that they can expose me to their community. So libraries play that role. Over to you.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts on this point on empowering marginalized communities from anyone there?
I think it's just to mention that, buttress the point rather on what Bobby said about getting people there, like training local leaders. That's what I will call them. So in my community, we kind of have what we call hubs, fan clubs. So that simply means that in Wikimedia Foundation, we can create all of the content we want. As African Wikimedians, we can also create all of the content we want. But sometimes if the communities we want to reach out to do not see someone from them who they can identify with, that actually, should I say, pioneers that project or whatever it is, or that content we're talking about, they might not actually listen to you. So sometimes it's cool for us to train people in that locality who can help to create more awareness of what it is that we want to do. And in that way, they will be more receptive to it. So I noticed that organizations like USAID, WHO, and so many others, when they want to do all of these, their vaccinations, they have something they call focal contact. So that focal contact is more like the local leader who goes to create awareness of whatever it is that they want to do for the people to be more receptive to it. And then, so this is just one of the things I just wanted to like buttress much more. We need that kind of a situation so that we'll be able to get more in depth into the marginalized communities, and then whatever it is we're doing would be more fruitful as well.
Thank you, Tochi. Those are great points. We are drawing close to the end, and we have one more final question. And this is one of the ones I'm really interested in, and I'm looking forward to everybody on this panel to touch on this question. And I will start with Maryana, because it's more from a strategy or forward-looking piece. So the point is about the future. So what innovative approaches or initiatives have been successful in promoting knowledge equity in Africa, but also maybe we could draw on lessons elsewhere? And how can we scale this up or replicate it in other contexts?
Well, I'm probably the least experienced person on the panel to answer that, so I'll give it a shot, and then others should weigh in. I feel like that's the question I've been asking since I arrived, roughly 2 years ago. What are the things that have been working on the ground that can be scaled up? What are the contexts across different regions of the world where we can learn from each other? And Segun, you mentioned some of those experiments when you opened the panel. I think that the growth initiative to try to really develop a bottom-up, on-the-ground approach to increasing the number of editors in Africa is very important. I think that the journalism awards are an effort to try to bring stories and representation, which I think is a big part of what we've been talking about in the past hour. I also think the points that Tochi made, there are things that are relevant in contexts in other regions that we should be learning from, and we should be exchanging ideas around institutions and partnerships. So I think optimistically, people are focused on the right things, but as we all know, there are so many Wikimedians doing so many different things, they might not all be visible to us. And so again, I think in the 3 minutes we have left, Segun, it would be good to also hear from the other panelists.
Yes, please. So please, within 1 minute, I would like to hear from Sandister and then others. Sandister, maybe you go for it.
I think that because business is in, building the sum of human knowledge, bias shouldn't have a place, right? So everything that works against biases on within communities and on Wiki, that's something we don't want, and we kick out. So as Bobby used this word, being intentional, I think some of the campaigns that have been very intentional have been those directed towards gender, and such that even gender bias on Wikipedia is so big, it has its own Wikipedia article. And I think campaigns that have been very intentional, from Women in Red, Wiki Project Women, Wiki Project Feminism, Art and Feminism. I remember running campaigns like back to back for 7 weeks in the early days of Arts and Feminism, and women were really excited to just gather, have their own space and do their own thing. And then the results were clear. I don't have the dashboard link here, I would have shared it with people. So what I would just say is that for me, I like what folk are doing around gender. In fact, anything that just gets rid of bias, because we're looking for a sum of human knowledge here. Yeah.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Bobby. You would like
I think so. I think really one of the things that I like to do is to go through the reports in the community and just read, and I focus on the results and impact. And I noticed that projects, we're different. What works in South Africa might not work in Nigeria, might not work in, in Ghana and every places. So I really would, encourage everyone to just go there and read, and whatever works in your, think will work in your country, just copy that and use it in your country. Over to you.
Thank you, Bobby. Tochi, do you want to do that in 10 seconds or less?
Yeah, so for me, language is important. So the local language Wikipedias that keep growing from Africa is kind of tremendous, even though that it hasn't reached quarter of the languages we speak in Africa. But from 2019, when we had like 19 languages, language Wikipedias, or 21 African language, 2021, when we had 19 African languages, to 2023, when we now have 46. I think that has been a very good way and a major step forward in promoting knowledge equity and making it possible for people to access knowledge. Another thing is the mobile editing. The mobile editing now is making it easier for us, because a lot of people do not have PCs and all that, so we can edit on mobile. So that works.
Thank you, Tochi. That was great. Thank you, everyone, for this wonderful panel. I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot. My appreciation goes to everyone on the panel, from Maryana to Sandister, Tochi, and Bobby. Thank you for your time. And to everyone on the call, we thank you for your time, and we look forward to your questions and contributions. All right, that marks the end of our first series. Look forward to the next one. All right, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.